just a quick product. Just going to focus on the products. 9-month results on Danish krone. So if you're just tuning in, Novo Nordisk is one of the largest drug companies in the world now, which is amazing, because they only sell products really for type 2 diabetes, which is kind of a fascinating thing. You could tell me you could build such a big company just on diabetes, most people would tell you you're crazy. But they have, and they really dominate the space for not just insulin, but the so-called GLP-1s. This looks off, but maybe there's some big swings in stocking and stuff like that. Anyway, I'm just going back through some of the numbers that I missed because I was in prison. They're transitioning everybody from Victoza to Ozempic, which is once a week. And you can see the growth in Ozempic. This is one of the biggest drugs in the world. The exchange rate for the krone is around 6. So the last 4 quarters they sold 40 billion krone, which is, what is that, $6.5 billion US dollars. So really successful. And look at the growth, right? So if you look at this quarter, that's $2 billion. So they're run rating at 8 billion in revenue. Kind of amazing. Alright, then they have this Saxenda and Wegovy, which are GLP-1s for obesity. And again, most people never thought the obesity market could be a big market, in pharma at least. And that's also starting to change due to Novo Nordisk. Let's see here. JavaScript is a full-featured language. I mean, it's very different from its scripting roots as a Netscape browser. I think that it's changed quite a bit. JavaScript's pretty heavy duty now. This lady won the pretty amazing Fields Medal.
So thank you very much for introducing me. So today I will speak about sphere packing in higher dimensions.
And to me, she's more of a babe than any Instagram thought.
Okay, so
Dots are a dime a dozen. There's only 2 women in history that have won the Fields Medal. Think about the Fields Medal as the highest honor of math, only for the greatest geniuses. One of the funniest things about the Fields Medal is you can't win the Fields Medal if you're under 40 years old. I'm sorry, you can only win the Fields Medal if you're under 40 years old. So here's, that's what it looks like. I wear one around my neck. Of course, only 2 women have ever won the Fields Medal in the history of the Fields Medal. So 8-dimensional sphere packing. Can you think in 8 dimensions? Marina can. Interpolation of Fourier analysis.
Nothing in life comes for free. We are all very adaptable, we can manage a lot, but it all somehow has its price. I am from Kiev, Ukraine, and in February my life changed forever. And not only for me, but for everyone in the world, and especially the people in my country. Whenever we have something good in our life, often we take that for granted. And peaceful is what I always took for granted. Now I understand how wrong I was about that. I'm a professor of mathematics at the PFA, École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne. I'm a chair of number theory.
My favorite.
What we are doing, of course, it's shaping the future, but maybe it will be used 100 years from now, but it's still important. What we like about students is that they are young, they are still enthusiastic, they have a lot of energy and they believe in what is ahead of them. I can tell them what my opinion is, and students would say like, no, professor does not know what she's talking about. So maybe one advice for PhD students is to, okay, at least give your advisor this privilege of a doubt. And I think this is advice which is good both for professors and for students. I work on geometric optimization problems. So sphere packing, it's a very natural geometric problem. You have a big box and you have an infinite collection of equal balls, and you're trying to put as many balls into the box as you can.
That's what she said.
Legend is that people were interested in is how many cannonballs can they pack into the ship. So the answer for the cannonballs is, as you see in a supermarket, the oranges stocked in this pyramidal shape. So essentially this is the best possible packing. But now we could also go to other dimensions. And maybe here it's time to explain what are other dimensions. If we are on a plane, we would need only 2 coordinates to describe every point. And on a line, we need 1 number. But if we are moving in a 3-dimensional space, we need 3 coordinates to describe every point, like GPS coordinates. But as mathematicians, we can go farther. Nothing stops us for introducing 1 more coordinate or 24 different coordinates. For many years, people thought about the sphere packing problem and developed many methods how to address it.
Rest in peace to a real one, John
construct some
Conway.
object which is optimal, or you have to show that nothing better can be done. So in this dimension, they found some bound. However, in dimensions 8 and 24, the bound came very, very close to the actual density of known packings. E8 packing in dimension 8 and Leech lattice in dimension 24. So they realized there exists this magic function which is supposed to actually prove the optimality of packing. My contribution was to give an explicit formula for the magic function. And this is what took from 2003 to 2016, like 13 years to find.
Amazing.
My parents and my 2 sisters normally live in Kiev. So when the war started, I could not think about anything else, including mathematics. During those first days, I realized how much I love teaching, because on the very first day I had my first class here in the PFL. Of course, when I'm in front of class, I have to forget about everything else, because I have to be very focused. This made me to forget about this fear and pain inside myself. Recently, I dedicated a lecture to Julia Zdanovska, a young mathematician and computer scientist from Kharkiv. My teachers from Kiev University were also her teachers. Julia was a person filled with light, and her big dream was teaching mathematics to kids in Ukraine. During the first days of war, she was killed in a missile attack on Kharkiv. When young people die, you think, okay, so what's the point of my work as teacher if young talented people are just wasted in this terrible war? When someone like her dies, it's like the future dies. Right now, Ukrainians are really paying the highest price for our beliefs and for our freedom. I'm very happy that my sisters Tanya and Natasha evacuated from Kiev and are staying with my family as the war continues. Tanya has to separate with her husband, and I know it is extremely difficult for her. My niece and my nephew miss their dad a lot, They understand what is happening now in Ukraine, and it is a lot to process for them. My husband Daniel is a physicist at EPFL. Daniel has a passion for photography. Thanks to his pictures, we have a wonderful way to remember important and happy moments of our lives. The thing I like about Kyiv the most are the green parks and quiet places and the ancient churches. I understand that now there will be marks of war there, and this is a scary thought. But Kyiv is one of the eternal cities. One day soon, I hope to return.
Yeah, congratulations to Marina. There's no really great way to describe 8 dimensions, but maybe thinking a little bit about it in 4 dimensions will help you.
Fans of the Marvel Universe will know that the Tesseract is the glowing blue cube that people from not only Earth, but other planets are also desperate to get a hold of. That's why all the Avengers teamed up to protect Earthlings from the devastating powers of the Tesseract. However, you might not know that the Tesseract is an actual geometrical concept, or rather, a shape that exists in 4 dimensions. It's not just a blue cube from Avengers, it's a real concept. A tesseract is an object that exists in 4 dimensions. However, before we explain a tesseract in detail, let's start from the beginning. You've likely heard the terms 2D and 3D many times, which represent 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional objects in space, respectively. However, what do those dimensions really mean? Quite simply, a dimension is a direction in which you can go. When drawing a line on a piece of paper, you can go up and down, y-axis, as well as left and right, x-axis. This means that a piece of paper is 2-dimensional, as there are only 2 directions you can go in. Now, in reality, we can also go in and out, which provides a sense of depth in 3-dimensional space. A dot is equivalent to 0 dimensions, a line represents 1 dimension, and a square has 2 dimensions, and a cube has 3. Now, take a 3-dimensional cube and replace each face, which is currently a square, with a cube. The shape you now hold is a 4-dimensional tesseract. Simply put, a tesseract is a cube that exists in 4-dimensional space,
This isn't a good
or the
explanation.
4D analog of a cube. Here is a simple way to conceptualize dimensions. A square is a 2D shape, so each of its corners has 2 lines coming off it at 90 degrees. A cube is 3-dimensional, so each of its corners has 3 lines coming off of it. Similarly, a tesseract is a 4D shape, so every corner has 4 lines coming off of it. Now, since humans have only evolved to visualize the world in 3 dimensions, anything that's a part of further dimensions like 4D, 5D, or 6D don't make much sense to us because we can't visualize them. Our brains can't make any sense of a 4th dimension in space. We simply can't wrap our heads around it. However, just because we can't visualize a concept doesn't mean that it can't exist. Mathematically speaking, a tesseract is a perfectly accurate and plausible shape, as are all shapes in higher dimensions, such as 5D and 6D. Just as a cube can be unfolded into 6 squares in 2-dimensional space, a tesseract can be unfolded into 8 cubes in 3-dimensional space. That might be a bit mind-blowing, but don't worry, the math checks out, and this concept will continue to fascinate mathematicians, engineers, and superhero fans for generations to come. Just remember, a tesseract is entirely plausible, and is much more realistic than that glowing blue infinity.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, if you have a Cartesian plane, you can plot all the x's and all the y's, in this Cartesian plane here, whatever, by sort of notating what the, whatever the coordinates are in the x and the y, and then obviously if you do the same thing with the z dimension, you can do that too. Pick an x direction, pick a y direction, and pick a sort of a z direction, and you have 3 vectors that explain the location. Now, if you try to do it in 4 dimensions, your brain will get a little messed up. But if you do it in like in a matrix notation or something, you say, well, this point exists at 0 and 1. Well, if you just made that a 2D matrix, you know exactly where. Well, 0 is the on the y-axis, and then 1 is 1 point higher, so this is the point we're talking about, right? And this is a Cartesian plane. And you do the same thing with 0, 1, 2, or 0, 1, 5 maybe. And then in the fourth dimension, you would add 7. So how do we draw this on some kind of tool like a Cartesian plane or maybe a three-dimensional plot device? You couldn't really do that. But you can certainly perform mathematical operations, like you can add 2 four-dimensional vectors pretty easily or multiply them or whatever. So how do we think about this fourth dimension, though, in maybe more unique ways? So one of the ways I've thought about it is thinking about, you know, here you have x and you have y. I'm sorry, you have y and you have x. Sorry, a little foolish. And maybe you have a zth dimension going down here, right? And so maybe one idea here is, okay, so on the x we're at 0, on the y we're at 1, and on the z we're at on 5. So I don't know, maybe we're somewhere like around here. But maybe for how do we notate 7? So now we're kind of lost because there isn't a second dimension, a fourth dimension, I should say. So let's notate another one like 1, 3, 6, and 2. All right, so 1 on x is over here, 3 on y is up here, and then in the zth dimension we're going to go kind of like deeper into space, if you will. So we're going deeper on the page, if that makes sense. So here's, you know, this is the third dimension, the z. So this is x, this is y, this is z, and we'll call this q. So what does it mean to go q space? Because we've already gone deep, and if we were going to come into negative z space, it would be coming into us, right? And with positive z, we're going outwards, deeper. So this is just 3 dimensions we're familiar with. So how do we go into the fourth dimension? And I think this is kind of interesting. One of the ways that I thought about it is you don't have to do it spatially. So what I mean by that is if you took this and you made a sound or you made a color or some other property, you can sort of think about, okay, well, orange is maybe on the electromagnetic spectrum, visible light. You know, you have something like red, right? Kind of orange, then yellow, green, blue, etc. And so maybe the best way to think about this, since we can't visualize it in 4 dimensions, but we can visualize color, and we can listen to sound. So maybe the best way to think about it is this point is actually, you know, in the case of 7, let's see, let's pick 2. So this would be orange, because that's sort of 2 on an electromagnetic scale, and this would be sort of a deep blue as it's 7. Of course, you could logarithmically kind of adjust the scale so that, you know, you can fit it to certain values, but this could be one way that you can maybe conceptualize fourth dimensions. And people in programming have to do this a lot because you have arrays that could be multidimensional. So I don't know, just one kind of funny thought. And again, sound works the same way, right? Sound has its own dimension. Of course, we care about spatial dimension, the properties of like non-Euclidean space and how that works, but I still think there's another, like lots of ways, like for Excel, you guys see me in Microsoft Excel a lot, and this is in essence 2-dimensional space, right? And so often, sometimes we'll actually want a third dimension. You know, I'll give you a funny and stupid example, like, and this is a problem with SQL as well, is let's say I had a product. That product is lots of different hats. So I had a New York Mets hat I'm selling, I've got a New York Yankees hat I'm selling, it sells a lot better. I got a Boston Red Sox hat, who in the world would want that? And then, so this is the X dimension, right? Or you can call it Y, you call it whatever one you want, but let's call that X. And let's put that over here. So this is X. And then let's say we wanted to put dates. So let's pick A322, we add 1, and this is the Y-th dimension, right? And this is easy. I can plot something for every X and every Y, but what something am I trying to plot? We could call that, I guess, you know, the number of hats sold, right? And so we could have some number like this, and I could just generate this with my friend Marak's faker.js tool. I can just do it a little randomly myself. So we got a data set here, and we could plot this pretty easily, right? And I could just say, you know what, I don't like this because I want to also know the dollars sold. And now I have a problem. I can't represent that right? I can't represent that in 2 dimensions. I'd like to say, well, on 8-4, I sold 3 hats, but how much did I sell them for? Assume each hat was maybe negotiated, or maybe geographic distribution. I can think of an infinite number of dimensions. There's no real way for me to show that. There's also, in options volatility, you have the same issue. So you have different strike, right? You have expiry up here, right? What else do you have? You got the strike price, you got the expiry, and what else? There's a 3rd dimension, right? Because it's easy to graph those 2. Let's try. We already have strike price. Implied volatility? Well, we got the price of the actual contract, right? So that's how we derive implied volatility. So the expiry sort of serves as the time dimension. The strike price sort of serves as one of the dimensions, and then we have a value that serves as an answer for that, right? So I don't know. There's you can graph 3 dimensions with this as well. In lots of different ways. You could put implied volatility or price, theoretical price, and then the value of the contract. So anyway, we do have to deal with multiple dimensions a lot. It doesn't mean that we necessarily can do it or we have great tools to do it with. So again, SQL has its problems, NoSQL has its problems. There's no simple way to do this, but understanding the question will help you pick the tool that maybe is the best for you. So anyway, I hope that helps. Some interesting stuff to talk about. Let me just finish filling this out. But yeah, really happy that a woman won the Fields Medal. I think that's really cool and inspiring. You know, there are a lot of great women mathematicians, actually. And as much as you guys see me thinking or looking at Twitch girls and quote-unquote thoughts, whatever that is, you guys use that term, I don't. On Instagram models, things like that. You may see me looking at that, but there's nothing that attracts me more to a woman than a broad and significant knowledge of mathematics. I think that's what does it for me. Why is Levemir so volatile? It almost feels like I have the wrong data or something. Zoltofi. Yeah, the problem with Novo Nordisk is their insulin business is at peak. Like, it's really hard for them to find a way out of insulin. And so the question was, will that happen to GLPs as well? Looks like they didn't disclose Rybelsus here. Look at this remarkable... Oh, this is Q219. That's why this looks so weird. That's why. What have I been looking at? Have I been getting this wrong for Q320 as well? Let's take a look. Gotta pay attention. Problem is I have all these bells and whistles and DMs and thotties and all kinds of things going on. If my cat were here, she'd be loyally by my side, sitting down. Oh, I need Taylor, ideally, to make Instagram for Trashy Cat. My dad is sending me some money photos, and we want Trashy to have her own Instagram. Trashy Live matters too, you know. Okay, so I did get this right. It's like my life flashed before my eyes that I picked the wrong quarter. It's not that big a deal. And because these quarters happened a while ago, again, it would be good for me to go through them with a fine-tooth comb, but I have to move more quickly. if I play some music. Yeah, I think this number might be wrong. I think a couple of these might be. I'm going to double check that one too. Oh yeah, I have a funny tweet to send out. First, some pianos become the teeth. Just, you know, I think somebody's chopping onions in here. Just, I'm not crying, you're crying. The big trick is the big trick is forecasting the non-insulin part of Novo Nordisk. One of my favorite albums that wasn't on the jail MP3 players was Blink-182. numbers, which is what we want to avoid, right? Try to find another song that I'm not made. So the better way to do it is kind of thinking about it from a top-down perspective, which is like, well, how many type 2 diabetics are there? How big is that class? Stuff like that. And there's a bunch of ways we can do this, and the lazy way is to do what I just did. And I'm just doing that just so my model has some numbers in it, to be honest. And it's not, again, the best way to do it. So we'll do that at some other point, but I just want to warn anybody watching that this is not the best way to do it. I'd like to sort of fix up some other things in this model. But give me a minute. Oh, they reported today. That's cool. Let's take a look at how they did. I could only see you now. Alright, so we had insulin at 13,289, and it came in at 12,343. Big decline, actually. Sharp weakness there. Now they're putting GLP on the front here, and look what happened with Ozempic. 14 billion. So here's the example of bad forecasting, right? So look at Ozempic's growth, right? It's actually growing, which is so unusual, right? Usually big products don't keep growing. Usually big products will. Sorry, I'm just lowering the music a little bit. Usually big products will have decelerating growth, or so-called negative second derivative, because they're big products. They kind of have to. Over time, it's hard to accelerate the growth of something. If it's growing at all, it's positive. But here, Ozempic is, so I took the growth from last quarter, which was 80%, and said, all right, they can't possibly keep growing at 80%, so let me think, they'll grow at 70%. Wrong. Not only did they grow they grew faster than last quarter. It looks like they grew at 93%. How many products do you know that are selling that much and still growing at 90%? And the reality is, if you look at Facebook or Google, some of these other tech companies in their early parts of their growth cycle, they actually did have either stable second derivatives or positive second derivatives for a big chunk of their growth, which is really funny. So I know Wegovy has capacity issues too. So anyways, it's just kind of interesting to sort of think about, a lot of people who start out forecasting and stuff like that, they think about law of large numbers, and they're often really wrong about how that works. So again, I did it as a quick and dirty just to populate the cells in my model. Sort of psychologically make me feel better. That's not the way I would do it normally. So, and type 2 is a weird space. Again, like I was talking about how like unusual it is to think about Novo Nordisk, kind of, and what they've done with their over the long run, and how they built one of the biggest drug companies in the world. These people really didn't like their quarter there, but one of the biggest drug companies in the world over, let's see here, this charting. Okay, got, what am I not looking for here? I'm still sort of new to this trade view, or whatever it's called, trading view. Kind of want to see a long-term chart of Novo Nordisk. I see, maybe like this. Yeah, you can see how successful the company has been. That drop looks like a big drop, but when you start zooming out, you realize it's not very big at all. Yeah, so they built this company on insulin and GLP, and you can see this is $1 stock in the 90s on a split adjusted basis. Imagine buying something for 60 cents, 90 cents, and owning it. Trying to figure out how do we get a little closer here, $5, $3. This is, you could have got this in 2008 for $13 and have it now for $100. Pretty amazing. And that's in, you know, this was a terrible recession, right? Look at this. It went from 14 on a split adjusted basis down to, say, 8 or 9. That was like the Great Recession. It shows you that like pharma stocks, even pharma stocks aren't immune to recessions, but you know, you look back and you look at this chart and you're like, wow, you barely even noticed this little decline here. I remember when this happened. It's pretty interesting. But yeah, what an amazing company, you know, one of the most successful companies ever. I don't know if Revolution Medicines is going to become the next Novo Nordisk. It's a bit different. This is a really old company. Novo Nordisk has been around a really long time. So anyway, just something to think about. I usually use TradingView for crypto. This is not the chart I want. This is also not the chart I wanted. Just a little closer. So what was that? Earlier today? A little too short term. Yeah, we definitely kind of bottomed. Oh yeah, now I see. We're still in kind of this pretty not great trend. I'm not a chart person at all, but there's not many other ways to plot price on time. You can kind of get a visceral sense for it in your head, but I drew this line, I drew these lines, which mean nothing, but I just felt like it was, even like a non-chart user to me, like me, sort of felt like there's this like, kind of can't ignore this kind of downtrend, if you will. It doesn't seem that profound, it's only a few weeks, but it seems like constantly lower lows. So we'll see. I'm kind of bearish on crypto right now. This rally was interesting. I was long for this. But yeah, we could see all the lower lows, and then there's like some big rally now. Again, I'm not a chart person. I don't advocate looking at charts all day. I think it's a huge waste of time. But some people do. It's up to them. All right, so let's go back to these Q2 results. Got to look at the income statement a little bit now. I think I'm the one person on the planet that pays for Adobe Acrobat. Right, okay, we got to fill out the rest of the income statement, so the rest of the sales section. But let's see. So Victoza, they're sort of moving people from Victoza to Ozempic, but that's been going on for many, many years. And even Ribelsis picked up faster than I thought. So I did the law of a large number of things again, and Ribelsis has beat that as well. Ribelsis is I think the oral form of Ozempic. How did Wegovy do? Wegovy is kind of a shit show right now because of the shortage, but they were capacity constrained, so that's what happened there. I think people were pretty upset about that. It's going to be a while before Wegovy picks up as well. Saxenda is selling rather well as well, so let me see if I get that down here. It's not that important of a product for them, but it's kind of like their obesity version of Ozempic. And they're putting a lot of effort into making diabetes a disease state that physicians and others recognize, which has been quite a challenge, to be frank. Okay, so it's not selling that well, growth-wise. I mean, we could see if growth, again, you know, we can't assume anything about growth. These products, these are, I don't know, they're sort of unusual products. Okay, we can fill out the insulin side real quick. The insulin side, I think you can forecast kind of more naturally because it's not a changing market. But the idea that there are millions of type 2 diabetics that could do better on GLP-1 than they could do on insulin or they could do on orals is really interesting. right? And that all started with a company called Amylin many years ago. Amylin's Byetta is now property of AstraZeneca, and the GLP wars were. Where were you during the meme wars of 2008? The GLP wars were fought over the last 20 years, and Novo's kind of won them. But Eli Lilly's biggest selling product is a GLP, so there's sort of this long-term kind of movement towards GLPs. But on the insulin side, there's basically no innovation. There's no opportunity. It's sort of just very whatever, which makes sense. And in fact, I would think insulin's going to start to. I started this whole thing by being surprised at how much it declined. Maybe we should keep that in mind. And you're talking about a big decline here in insulins. What they have here, total insulin down 13% at constant exchange rates. It's a pretty freaking big decline. And it was stable, which is even more interesting. So now you're really seeing GLP eat insulin. All right. Anyway, Novo 7, their hemophilia drug. That's probably going to go away too. Gene therapy is the problem, but they also have a gene therapy for hemophilia, so it's possible they could work out. But all right, what else? Rare endocrine, rare disease. All right, so there we go. 41,265. So revenue growth, 25% for a $200 billion company. I mean, that's just blistering revenue growth, right? This is an old model from many years ago, so I have to try to kill this whole competition thing. Yeah, so 1.8 trillion kron is 300 billion market value. Amazing. I don't know what the latest stock price is actually in kron. Let's take a look. Copenhagen stock price 771. Yeah, people didn't like the earnings today. The market didn't like the earnings today, but the stock had been on such fire that any little disappointment will do that in the short term. Let's see. Probably want to look at a balance sheet here as well. Certainly want to look at the income statement, so let's do that. There's not much funny business in Novo Nordisk's income statement too, which is nice. Not a lot of charges and one-time thises and that's. Really simple company. Sell the crap out of insulin and GLPs. It's basically what they do. Clean financials. All right. Just gonna make a net financial expense here. I'm gonna try to refactor this model a little bit. Okay. I think this company single-handedly supports the entire country of Denmark. Okay, great. Now let's see. Shares outstanding here somewhere, 2276.1. I don't know. Looks like they're doing buybacks. Okay. Gross margin's 85%. Those GLPs are really high margin. They're just going to get a higher margin. You can make an adaptive gross margin filter. I'd also like to see if GLPs they're making a recombinant or solid state synthesis. That's kind of important. Let's see. Selling and distributions. Looks like it's growing in line with sales. What percentage is that? No, it's quite a bit faster. 2 billion over 8 billion is... Kind of investing in sales, a little unusual. R&D is usually whatever for pharmaceutical companies. It's kind of irrelevant how much they spend on R&D. It's not even a cost. It's kind of a capitalized. It should be capitalized. We've got tax rate as well. I'm going to look at tax rates down here. Denmark doesn't give them much of a break. They pay their fair share. Bernie Sanders would be proud. 20% tax rate. It should be 50%. What are they doing? Bernie Sanders, vote for me. I'm 90 years old, but you should still vote for me. Alright. So, let's see. I'm just going to call this G&A. Call this other. %100 taxes. Why not? These Wall Street scumbags charge them 100%. Alright, so I have to refactor kind of like these 3 lines, and then I'm in good shape. Turn them from a like Danish style company to American, but at the end of the day, income statements are universal language. So interesting how they went on this like growth spurt. I had to learn the story of the company a little bit better. Not quite ready to do any forecasting. Let's take a look at NumPy, just because I've been meaning to do so for a while. See if there's any